Welcome to Fun Palais Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Sherley, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Fun Palais Podcast, and today we have a special guest with us. We have Jacqueline. Jacqueline guides introverted women of color to get seen, heard, and respected by embracing their awesome. Despite a challenging yet accomplished upbringing, she's become an international speaker, global best-selling author, and an advisor and mentor to Fortune 500 executives, all while honoring her introversion. Jacqueline, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am much better now.
Good to hear. So if you want to add to your bio, tell the listeners who you are, an extra, what you do, and all that other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that pretty much covered me in a nutshell. I mean, I'm definitely the excitable introvert. You may hear why that's the case throughout this interview, but I love being able to help and not even so much help, but really guide introverted women. We already have a vision of ourselves and we already know what we're capable of. The challenge comes when we're trying to honor that and also maintain ourselves while navigating someone else's expectations of who we should or shouldn't be. And so being able to guide these lovely ladies in the process of owning their service and themselves is a beautiful thing. And it's something that I love doing.
All right, my dear. So that's good to hear. So now we're going to pass you the mic yet again, and you're going to be sharing your story.
Absolutely. Well, my story started off pretty early. I knew at a very young age that I was going to be a writer. I knew I would be on stages and I knew I would travel the world. I didn't know how any of that was going to happen. Is there was nothing in my environment that really pointed to any of those things being a possibility. But I'm that off-center kid who at 5, when everyone else wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or a vet or something like that, I wanted to be a New York Times bestselling author. And so that was my career aspiration. So very early, I knew that this was a life that was meant for me, even though I couldn't see how that was possible. And so the challenge for me as I continued to grow was how to honor this natural calling. I knew that my life was designed to be for these bigger things, but growing up in a lower working class family in the South, being in a very challenging situation with a lot of chaos and dysfunction in our house, it was very difficult to navigate. How do I maintain my quiet kind of really self-reflective self? Like, how do I honor that and also be in front of people the ways that I know that I want to?
Mm-hmm.
And that that challenge, it took a lot, because everything around me, and this is still sadly the same when it comes to introverts, the conventional wisdom is that you need to get out of your shell, you just need to talk up more, you just need to go out more. And first of all, not helpful, but also that's not how we were designed. And so where are those voices that say you can be reserved and reflected and also be in front of stages and be a big personality and have joy? Where are those voices? There were none. And so the pivotal moment for me came when I had some opportunities come up as I started stepping into this vision of myself. I knew I wanted to write. So how do you do that? You start writing. I know I'm going to be on stages. How do you do that? You go on stages. You say yes to opportunities when they come. And so in the process of doing that, it created a path for me to change schools, and that recruiting process for me to go to a different place really changed everything. because now I had this clean slate. I didn't know
Mhm.
the people. The only person I knew was the teacher who was recruiting me to come to this school.
Okay.
That's it. And so with this blank slate came this opportunity to create whatever life I wanted. And so I decided, what if I just say yes to me? What if I just say yes to this vision of myself that I have? Okay, let's see how this goes.
Mhm.
And so saying yes to opportunities led to more opportunities, which led to more opportunities. And so this really taking a chance on me to go to this different school, to be a part of this debate team that I joined in this kind of preparation of being the speaker, it led to me being a college instructor. It led to me being a broadcast journalist. It led to me graduating high school early. It led me to finding the person who is now my husband. It led to me being able to travel. It led to all of these things that were in my mind from the earliest stages. But it started with me betting on me and seeing how it goes.
Mhm.
And that notion is really what I continue to this day. And it's what I help other women with as well. What if you just say yes to you? What if you just say yes to your dreams and let's see how it goes? So yeah, that's a very long, a long but winding. Um, Really sharing of not only what it is that I do and the reason why I do it, but how it even started. I've
Mhm.
been doing this practically since I came from the womb. It's part and parcel of me.
I'm about to make it even longer, trust me, because I have some questions and we're going to unravel the short version. So, dysfunction in the house, what does that mean?
Oh, it was, I mean, always walking the tightrope. I
Mhm.
was able to do a lot of amazing things early on.
Mhm.
So, publishing books, being able to do my first book tour when I was 11, being able to win international awards for speaking, like all of that's fantastic. But while all of that was happening, there was also violence in the home. There was a lot of dysfunction just in general,
Mhm.
a lot of unhealthy habits that were generational. And
Mhm.
so here I am, not only in the middle of these two things where, on the one hand, I'm doing these amazing works, like blow your mind. You were how old and you did what?
Mhm.
And also having to like protect myself,
Mhm.
having to hide my siblings
Mhm.
when things got a little too heated, and not able to tell anyone about it because
Mhm.
I didn't want to create a situation where things got worse,
Mhm.
or even more than that, where we're taken out of the home and now what? Like I don't even have my siblings. I don't know where they are. And so it this tightrope is where the dysfunction came. And I later understood that me having to navigate kind of this duality, it serves me now being able to do that. It serves me in being able to speak to that experience and to be able to see kind of multiple sides of a situation. But at the time, it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure. And my way of handling it, being the introvert that I am, I'm thinking through the process. Okay, so how could this be resolved? What needs to happen? How do I protect myself? How do I? And it became, all right, if I put all of my energy towards doing all of these things, towards excellence, towards being the best, then maybe it'll take the edge off of what's happening at home.
Okay.
Maybe if I'm doing for everyone, maybe that will take off some of that pressure and some of that angst that's leading to everything else. Now, of course, as a kid, you can't do that.
Mhm.
And even as an adult, you can't do for others what they need to do for themselves. But that tumultuous kind of environment, along with kind of the highs and lows of it, is there were lots of great things that were happening in our house. There were lots of great experiences that we had, but it was just so, one moment we're on cloud nine and the next moment we're in the pits of hell, and there is no transition.
Gotcha. Gotcha. How many siblings are we talking?
Two.
Two. So it was three children altogether. Are you the
Mm-hmm.
oldest?
Yes.
Okay. Was
Yeah.
the house dynamic typical household mom and dad?
Yeah, just typical regular from the outside. nothing's unusual.
Nothing's
Two
unusual.
parents, three kids, everyone's fed, everyone's like in clean clothes, everyone's going to school,
Okay.
parents go off to work, come back. I mean, from the outside, it looked, I don't want to say Brady Bunch, but we're church going folk. We're just
Okay.
regular schmegular people. And also
There
there's all of
were
this chaos that's in um
chaos.
that's under the surface.
Was there a lot of arguing between them?
Yes.
Verbal,
Yeah, a lot
and
of that.
was there physical?
Lots of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for all of us.
For
And then
oh,
having to, how how do you navigate these spaces?
gotcha.
Like when you, it's a common experience in a lot of Black households where one person gets in trouble, everybody gets in trouble. And those, I wasn't
Uh,
even there, I was like outside when whatever transgression happened. That part, and I laugh about it because it's a pretty common theme.
mm-hmm.
But when that's taken more to an extreme,
Mm-hmm.
so when it's not just you're all in trouble, you're being slapped or you're being beaten or you're having some other type of punishment, um, because one of you did it. And
But
since the
all
other
of
ones
you
didn't say anything,
are paying
you're
for it.
all gonna, everybody can get it.
Ah,
And so trying to find ways to, as much as possible, me being the eldest, how do I shield my siblings from that as much as possible?
okay.
And more importantly, how do I protect myself in those spaces where I'm not doing anything? I don't want, I wasn't here, I don't want to be here. Like, how do I avoid this? And of course you can't.
Mm-mm.
But that, just trying to make sense of it in a way that I could still function.
Gotcha.
And if my parents are literally brawling in the next room, and we're hearing the impact, we're hearing like the blows land, how can I distract my younger siblings so that if they're hearing it, they're not really hearing it? Like, what can we do? So sometimes it would look like us, like me creating games for them to play while all of that is happening in order to try to shield them as much as possible. Taking the blame
Mm-hmm.
for things that I had nothing to do with, but I know my dad's on a rampage today. And if
Gotcha.
my brother did something, it's not going to end well for anyone. So can I take the hit on this one, so to speak, in order to protect my brother? Or my sister is doing something and it's aggravating like my brother, so he's going to lash out, but if he lashes out against her, then she's going to tell, and then it's going to create this. So how can I like keep them from getting into it so that it doesn't blow up into something much bigger? Like, just always navigating, always trying to manage and trying to find the best way to keep as many people, if not happy, at least at a space of calm. How much of this
Gotcha.
can I do to maintain some sense of calm and
Got
also
it.
preserve myself? Because
True.
I'm like young doing this,
How
in
old were
addition
you?
to all of the other things.
How old were you, would you
This
say,
is
when this started?
this started before I was born.
Okay.
So literally all of my life, all of my siblings' life.
And so it
Yeah.
just, as the siblings came, you first were protecting yourself. Then when the second child came, you started protecting second child. Then when the third child came, you started protecting third child. That at times, did you have to even step in and protect mom?
There were times that I tried,
Mm-hmm.
but those moments, it was curious because in those moments there really wasn't, it's, how do I describe this? There's this notion like a child stays in a child's place, right? Very
Gotcha.
common in
Yeah.
most cultures.
Yeah.
So if you're supposed to be in a child's place, then you don't get involved in grown folks' business. This
Mm-hmm.
is grown folks' business, even though it's affecting you, even though this is happening in front of you, even though this is affect, like you're in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
But you stay to the side because you're a kid, but also wanting to protect because this is happening.
Yeah.
Like, this is this is not normal. This isn't regular. This isn't something that should be happening. How do I find the boundaries between the both of them, between both of my parents? Because sadly, it went both ways.
Oh,
We joke about them being both the two Scorpios. They're both
okay.
Scorpios
Uh-huh.
for their signs. So constant battle, like constant
Ah,
battle between the two. Um, Whether it was arguing, whether it was just completely different perspectives, whether it was like, coming to blows, whether it was nearly coming to blows, whether it was just arguing over how to handle punishing us. Just there was always something going on, and yet there was love that was there was that affection that was there too. And so this duality, like
mhm,
constantly being immersed in and seeing both sides of the coin, and knowing that there is validity to both. There's validity to this being a totally dysfunctional, just everybody leave situation, and also there's validity to this is the love of my life. We love you all with all that we have. We are showing you love as best as we can. Both of these are true. Both of these are valid, but they can't both be true. Yes,
mhm,
these are like complete opposites.
mhm.
And having to navigate that from an early age, recognizing that there is a difference in these two things, seeing the difference in those and trying to reconcile it. That was, I mean, that's like air.
Yeah, I totally understand. I grew up in a house too, and I'm Haitian, so culturally it's different. I totally understand what you mean. A child stays in a child place. In my home, your opinion didn't matter. I mean, you are a
Mm-hmm.
child, you're given the respect I give you. Whatever I give you is what you get. You're not an adult, so I don't need to respect you any differently. So I understand what you mean in all those aspects. I am the eldest child for my mother. And in our household, it was a family of four, a girl, a boy, a mother, a father. Um, but there was constant arguing in our house too. So I can definitely relate. Constant arguing. Always had to protect my little brother. And same thing, it's interesting to hear you say, we had a loving home. Yes, it was loving. But now I have no shame in
Mm-hmm.
telling, but you guys did the best that you can, but it was very unhealthy. And I tell them with no
Yeah.
shame, and I crack jokes with my mother and she'll say something about my dad. And I'm like, that is your husband. You do know that, right? I have nothing to do with that. And this is me. This
Yeah.
is who I am
Yeah.
today because I remember, like, we're not going to act like there was nothing going on when I was a child. We're not going to throw that out the
Mm-hmm.
window. We're going to, like, bring it up, and I'll bring it up in my little comedy way. And she'll look at me like, that's right, lady. That's right. You heard what I
Yeah.
said. So I totally get you. And I always had to protect my little brother, and I was a strong one. I never cried because I knew my young little mind, just like you said, I'm like, this shit ain't right. Something ain't right here,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not much you could do as a child. You don't know what you could do. You're trying to
Yeah.
rationalize this in your head. And I was the eldest in the home. So here I am trying to protect this little boy. He crying and upset. And I'm looking at him like, kid, don't cry because this is all the time. Like, you got to start getting
Yeah.
used to this. And this is how I'm talking to my
Yeah.
brother, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, when is this going to end? And at one point, even when I got older, I had told him, I'm like, y'all don't need to be together. This ain't good.
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
totally
Oh God,
understand,
yeah.
Jacqueline, what you're talking about. So my next question is, when you said you wanted a clean slate and you went to a debate team, how old were you?
How was I then? 13 maybe?
Oh, you were young. Is this
Maybe
someplace
around 13, 14.
were you boarded?
It was very young. I was very young. So I was at one high school that was like in our neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And I decided, like I mentioned, I decided to join the debate team because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get practice with speaking. I never had a problem with speaking in front of large groups. I've been doing that since very early, speaking at church or things like this. But I knew that in order to like talk to the stadiums and these large auditoriums of people, that I would need to get more practice. And so in my mind, the logical step was to join a debate team. So I did that. And when I joined this team, we go to various competitions. The coach that was recruiting me saw me at a debate competition, and she sat in on one of the rounds, I suppose, that I had with her team. And from that point on, every competition, she would come. She's like, you really ought to come to our school. We've got so much. You would be so great on our team. I need you to come to our school. Every single competition. Now, she's like this little blonde haired, blue eyed Southern belle with this thick, syrupy Southern accent who's like begging me to come to her school and like just trying to convince me that I need to move there. Now this is still in the same town, but completely different side of the town. Complete like it's like I moved to a different city, and so I wasn't sure at first like what to make of this like random stranger who's even more excitable than me. It's like, you gotta come to our school. We love you. So I wasn't sure at first what to make of this, but every competition for months and months, for practically the rest of that year, she was like recruiting me. She's like, we'll be able to get you this. You'll be able to get ready for college, so on and so forth. And I felt, before I was convinced in my mind, I felt like this was the right next step. But in my mind's like, well, how's that going to work? Like already there's chaos and drama about me wanting to be involved in anything, because my parents were very, very protective of me getting involved in anything outside of a home, like engaging with other people. And so I wasn't really involved in a lot of outside things, with a couple of exceptions, but very, very few. So like, how is that going to go over? Mm-hmm. I'm wanting to do this completely new thing. I'm wanting to do this new thing that's going to have me interacting with people and going to even more competitions and things, which was already problematic. I'd be going to a whole new school. I'd have to acclimate. How would any of this work? Like, none of this logistically made sense to me, let alone like approaching my parents with it and they have to sign off on it. But I knew it was the right next step. So I did what any overachieving child did. I did all of the research and I got all of the paperwork, I had everything together. So all of the boxes were ticked except for their signature. I just needed their signature to make it official. And of course, when I presented this to them, they're like, well, what is all of this? Like, I've created this whole thing. How are we going to figure out, still have to take your siblings to school? I couldn't drive. And I didn't have a car. Like, there was none of that. So I relied on my parents to take me to said new school. How do you think we're going to be able to function with all of this you're talking about? They agreed. Somehow they agreed. They signed off on me going. And so that was my junior year of high school, my junior/senior year, because I ended up being able to graduate early. Okay. Once I got to that school. Okay. So this whole thing was just, it was her seeing this, seeing this potential that I felt in my heart, but I really hadn't allowed myself to really think was true. Like, I know it's true. I know it's going to happen. Like, of course it's going to happen. But is it really going to happen? That's sort of like self-doubt. And I had to latch onto, like, someone calls it like latching onto someone else's faith until yours catches up. That's what I had to do. I had to latch onto the possibility and the promise that she saw in me until my faith and my confidence and myself caught up. And once it caught up, it was so much easier for me to say yes. And that's why it was a blank slate. I literally knew no one but her. I met a couple of other people who were on the debate team because she was like just rant and rave about me being so amazing and how I've got to come and all of this to her team. Before, I wasn't even there. I'm like just some random kid. So I knew them kind of in passing. She's the only person that I knew. And so when I started, it's like, okay, well, they have lots of stuff here. Let me just say yes. Let's just see where this goes. So things like being a lead, like auditioning to be the lead of a school play. I wouldn't have done that. Are you kidding me? I didn't do that. Well, I did. Or being able to doing speaking competitions would not have even entered my mind as a possibility of things to do. But if I'm going to speak, I'm going to speak, and I'm saying yes to this vision of me, right? So that person who's going to be on those stages and doing all of these things, that person would say yes to this opportunity. So say yes. So I said yes. And even that snowballed into this whole other dynamic. I mean, I was able to pay for part of college through the winnings that I had for that. And those experiences are what, first of all, allowed me to be able to graduate early. But before I graduated, I got to be a college instructor from those experiences. There was a new program that was starting with a local community college for bringing in students who were, he called like underserved communities, which we definitely were that. And so they needed an English instructor for those students, kind of a pre college experience. And so I'm 17 being the English college instructor for this incoming program. But that wouldn't have happened if I had not said yes to this crazy lady and yes to myself. That never would have happened. She had a colleague who was leading up the program, and she nominated me to be the person to be the instructor for that. So the opportunity would have been there, and I wouldn't have known anything about it, let alone be nominated. I wouldn't have known that it even existed. So there were so many opportunities that came because of that blank slate. There was no one to say, oh, she's the quiet one. There was no one to say, oh, well, yeah, she might do it, but is she going to do a good job at it? Because, she doesn't like do anything with people. There was none of that. It was so liberating to have that space where I could say yes to things. And it drove my mom crazy because she would have to drive me to all of these like different things in between all of the activities that my other siblings had. And, she has to like work and things, have her own life with being an entrepreneur herself in addition to her full-time job. So it added even more on my mom's plate. And I'm very, very thankful that she didn't put me out. I'm thankful she didn't just like, you know what, if you take me on, I have to drive you to one more thing, which was usually the conversation, like at least every other week. You're gonna run these tires off my car. I have to take you to one more thing. It's like, but I need to do this so I can be ready for college, so I can do all the things I need to do. Like this is kind of on the path. God bless my mother.
Jacqueline, I totally understand. I totally understand. And you didn't let whatever was happening behind them doors affect what you needed to do. You stayed motivated. You protected your siblings. You did what you had to do in that house, literally to survive on the bad days, because you did say there were good days, but on the bad days, on the rough days, you did what you had to do to survive, and you still maintained your focus in school and to get where you want to get. Now, I'm going to dive a little deeper, because before we get into why you focused on helping women of color, especially those who are introverts, as I sit here, look at you, you have a ball of energy, woman, from when you talk, from your whole appearance. You are like time 20, and I'm an introvert, but I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert when I need to be. 99% of the time, Sherley is an introvert, but I don't have the magnitude of you're like a fierce lion. Like, I'm here, take me,
Oh, I
I just
appreciate
can't.
that. Oh
This
my
is you,
gosh.
and there's no wrong in that. You know what? We need people like you. Can you imagine if we had a world full of Shirleys, Jacqueline? It'd be like, oh my gosh, girl.
We
No.
need the mixed bag. We need all facets. We need all facets.
Absolutely.
Including those that grate our nerves. We need them too.
No, you're a ball of energy,
I'm
girl.
learning to embrace that part. Like all are needed, including the ones that are not your jam.
I know.
They're needed too.
They're needed too. But you're the one I picture at the round table at the meetings here. You're like, good morning, Shirley. I have your coffee ready. And, let's get to the discussion. And I'm like, Jacqueline, it's 9:00. This is me.
Yeah, I would be the person like, first, let me get my coffee. Don't talk to me. Don't Like, I don't exist. I know you see me, but you don't see me. Just leave me be. And even with engaging when I'm on stages and things, I love to be of service. I
Good.
love to be in a space where I can teach, where I can advise, and where I can pour into other people, because I know the ripple effect of that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just me having a conversation with you. From this conversation, you're walking away different. I'm walking away different. And that difference that we now have is going to affect our families. It's going to affect our friends. It's going to affect how we show up in our work, how we show up in our community. And so, whether it's for the positive or the negative, we are going to show up differently. And that is impacting so many other people. And so that's it's important for me to be in those spaces and to honor that.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I mean, this is literally me.
Yeah.
This is me. When I'll let you finish your question, because I think I know what you're going to ask, but I will let you ask it anyway in case I don't.
It's okay. So my question was going to be, you identify as an introvert? That's my question.
She's just staring at me.
So go
The
ahead.
question is
Elaborate.
just the stare, the smiling stare. So what I was going to elaborate on, I thought that you were going to ask me where you were leading is where, like, introvert where. That's like basically how it
Same.
popped into
However
my
you
brain.
want to unravel that question. Yeah, introvert
Introvert.
where you identify as that. What? Why did you pick
Yes.
that? You see yourself as that?
Yes, I absolutely am an introvert.
Ah.
And so there are a couple of pieces, and we'll take this apart thread by thread. First of all, people, when they hear the word introvert, they think of someone who's really quiet, who's really shy, who doesn't like to be around people, who, like, is antisocial. That's what they imagine when they hear the word introvert.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what makes someone introverted.
Okay.
That might be true, but that still applies to extroverts as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then what an actual introvert is someone who internally processes stimulation. And so for introverts, I'll give just a quick example of the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, because there's a spectrum also. People tend to think like either you're introvert or you're extrovert, or you're an ambivert slash omnivert, which is very trendy now to speak of kind of that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
So people who are more on the introverted side, I'll say, I had a sandwich for lunch. Okay, that will be my statement to the introvert. As I'm saying this statement, the introvert is hearing what I'm saying, that I had a sandwich for lunch. They're looking at my body language. They're picking up like my vibe, like how am I telling them for a purpose or not? What is it that I'm trying to convey? If there are other people around, they're noticing how other people are responding as I'm saying this, even if they're completely unrelated to this. They're thinking about the environment. So they're looking at my wallpaper. They're wondering if they should respond and what should be their response. And is it okay? What tone should they take when they respond? And did they do, like, all of this is happening at one time. Like this whole ball that I just said. For an introvert, all of this is happening in their mind as I'm uttering the statement, I had a sandwich for lunch. And so because we are taking in all of this stimulus, we're taking in everything said, unsaid, everyone's reactions, the whole atmosphere, our own thoughts and feelings about what's being said. Of course it depletes us. Of course it uses our energy very rapidly. And so these types of engagement, this kind of mind soup is happening with practically every interaction where we have this complete intaking of stimulation. So we have to get away from stimulation to sort through what it is that we took in, what parts are important and not. And we can't do that by just talking about it. That's just adding more stimulation. We need time away from anything stimulating, figure out what's important, what's our role in it, and from there we can craft a response or not. Extroverts do not process that way. They are external processors. So as I'm making the statement, I had a sandwich for lunch, They want to move around. They're like, oh yeah, well, I had soup. How was your sandwich? What did you have on it? They want to, in order to make sense of their world, they need to engage with it. So the fact that I had a sandwich for lunch is like great, but they can't make sense of it until they start talking about it. So they might ask me questions about it. They may start talking about what they had for lunch. They might talk about their favorite lunch that they had or some food that they like that's completely unrelated to anything that we're talking about. They'll be looking for other people to chime in. Their bodies are like moving around. They may even be fidgety. And all of that's because they have to engage with their environment before they can even decide if this is relevant. And they may be talking about all sorts of things in response to me having a sandwich for lunch. They're just processing. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing, all these words coming out of their mouth. They do eventually get to the part that matters, but because they are outward processors, they're saying all of these things to figure out what nugget is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get to the relevant nugget, all of this other stuff that they were saying and doing, that like vanishes into the wind. It completely disappears. They don't, I said what? I agree to who? What were we talking about? Because they're sorting through what is important by engaging.
Mm-hmm.
So completely different ways, completely different ways of taking in the world and processing what's happening. And so it's important to note, first of all, that distinction
Mm-hmm.
and what introversion is. It's simply how we internally process, but also to recognize the difference is not how loud or engaged someone is, or someone being shy or not, because you can be a shy extrovert as well. It's about how you process. That's what makes someone more introverted or not. So back to me and kind of my personality. My personality is more bubbly. I am the person, I will laugh at just about anything. I can find like the humor in the absurdity of life. I love to be able to share a smile with someone because I know what it's like to be like at the end of your rope and having just someone gave you a kind look,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just what you needed to like not jump on the tracks. It was just what you needed. And so I smile a lot, I laugh a lot, love telling jokes and quips. That's just part of who I am. But for processing, my processing is the same. I'm still taking in everything that's happening. I'm still having to sort through all of it. And even when I'm on stages or I'm engaging people, I have my time for engagement that I have to prep myself for it. I have to
Mm-hmm.
get my energy up for it. After it's done, I have to protect myself so that I can bring that energy back up. Because I've had instances where I'm on a stage, I had a great time at a conference, I give a wonderful speech, and I'm literally about to collapse. Like I have to hold myself up against the wall because I am so energetically depleted. Like my body is now beginning to get depleted. And I just need a moment without anything else. I can't have anything else for the next 5 minutes because I will pass out. I just nearly collapsed. Um, so I have to be protective and mindful of my energy and my space
Mm-hmm.
after I'm engaging. But once I have that moment to get that energetic bump,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's back on. Like what's happening? Like what can we do? Where are we going? Let's like invite me to the party. I'm gonna say no, but still invite me. I'm still happy that it's happening. Absolutely me. And so it's for me, that's how I have to handle things. And that for a long time, I couldn't really embrace that aspect of me
Mm-hmm.
because the notion is, oh, you like people and you're happy. You can't be an introvert. Introverts aren't sitting around sulking all the time. Like we may brood. That's part of how we process. We're creating all of these different worlds and seeing so many aspects of the world at any given moment. We'll take the smallest situation and we will craft a whole universe around it. We'll look at everything that happened, everything that could have happened, everything that should have happened, why or why not it wouldn't have happened. Who are the people reacting and what could their possible reactions be? How could you respond? We're doing all of this like just with the most basic things. We are fantastic at creation and being able to see so many different sides of things. It's part of our gift, but it can be a doozy when your mind is always doing
Definitely.
that.
I like how you broke it down to internally processing stimulation because immediately
Hmm.
that's what I did. I externally looked at you and I was like, this woman cannot be an introvert.
Yeah.
She just seems like she is the life of the party. I don't see any introversion in her at all, even though you're saying that. And
No.
I agree with everything you're saying, how you broke it down. I loved it because that is true. That is true. Immediately, people look at the exterior surface and how you're presenting yourself at that moment, and they automatically classify you either as introvert or extrovert. And of course, people can go both ways with them. Some is more the other than one. But
Hmm.
yeah, how you broke it down is completely correct. I agree 100%. And there's a part of me that knows that, but I think if we were on the introvert scale, I feel like I'm at 4 and you're at 7. And I say that because on the exterior surface, I'm at 4, you're at 7. Now, internally, we're the same when we're, in
Hmm.
processing stuff when people are talking to us. But girl, I ain't the life of the
Yeah.
party. Stand over there, don't stand next to
I'm
me.
not either. I'm the person like invite me to all of the
I
stuff.
know, I
I'm
heard
going
you.
to say
I'm going to
no,
say
but one
no.
time I'm going to say yes. So keep inviting me anyhow, and then it becomes like such a big thing when you say yes because you didn't deplete your energy like for the day
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't wear yourself out like planning ahead of how draining it will be. Because a lot of times for us introverts, that's really what drains us. The
The planning.
anticipation of
Mm-hmm.
being drained because we already know all of this stuff is going to happen and we have all of this other stuff that needs to happen and our brain is already full and do I really want to spend my little bit of energy on this nonsense that's going to stress me out anyway? You know what? I know I said yes. I know we leave in an hour, but no, I'm tired now. And it's just from thinking through the anticipation. You're not even there yet.
Yep.
Like you can get to these social situations, like I say a party, but I mean, it could just be dinner with friends. It could be like just a couple of girlfriends for a hang. It can be something that's so simple, nothing dramatic at all, or I don't know, really lively. But the anticipation of being drained, because
Mm-hmm.
again, our brains are fantastic at seeing all aspects and creating scenarios for it. That anticipation is a large part of how we get depleted. But the curious part that a lot of people don't recognize is that it's not part of the problem that I have when people talk about introverts and like introversion being like needing to be away from other people and being away from stimulation is that's not entirely accurate. When we are in spaces that we are safe and we don't have to do a lot of sorting, it's incredibly energizing. It's amazing when we're able to find like a crew of people that we can have those deep conversations, we can like ponder like the intricacies of life. Oh my gosh, don't get an introvert started. Like we will never stop. It'll be next week
Mm-hmm.
before we stop talking about something.
Yep.
But most of the reason why that happens is because we have less of this like basic stimulation to go through. We have a connection with you already. We're not talking about like the weather and all this other small talk that means nothing. It's just unnecessary noise. The
Mm-hmm.
weather is the weather is the weather. No one cares. Like what do you do for a living? I stress for a living. Like, what's the point of this question? Ask me what you're trying to ask me. Get to the point so we can get to the real meat of the matter. When we get to like the real meat of the matter, we are so, oh, it's like watering a plant. It is
Mm-hmm.
amazing to be in spaces where you can have these deep conversations where people are willing to open themselves and reveal their humanity. When you can connect human to human, it is for introverts, it's amazingly energizing. Oh, it is wonderful. And those are the places where we can thrive and we can linger and we will talk to, I mean, days we will linger in those spaces, but those spaces are so far and few. There's so few of those that we have. And so in order to get to that, there's so much sorting and sifting of people, of scenarios, of conversations, of engagement before we can even find those needles in the haystack, if you will. But once we find them, they're great. When we
Mm-hmm.
know that there's that space, we have no problem with showing up. We have no problem with speaking out and engaging, but it takes finding those spaces. That's the part that a lot of people's notions and kind of definitions, like the official, or not even official, the accepted definitions
Mm-hmm.
of introversion completely disregard that aspect of it. But that is a crucial part of introversion. That's part of how we can socially re-energize, which, like, social introvert energize.
Yeah, it's
Words
real
don't
and
go
it
together.
definitely exists. I definitely do
Yeah.
agree with you because we're all about, especially me, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm all about
Mm-hmm.
protecting my energy and my space and who I am giving my time to. I didn't quite understand when I was younger, but now at 38 years old, I have no shame in saying no. Where's the party? What's going to happen? And who's going to be there? And what is this function for?
Yeah.
All these questions I'm asking because, like you said, I'm internally processing the stimulation and figuring out how effective is this in my life at this moment and what I have to do. And I'll be quick. I'll tell you the answer right there. No, I ain't going. And I'll tell my
Yeah.
friends, you didn't give me prior enough notice. I'm definitely not the last minute person. Do not ever call me
No.
last minute on the day of
No.
an
Do
event
not.
and think I am just going
No.
to throw something on and gather myself together and go. You didn't give
That's
me
not going to happen.
prior notice, I will not be attending. And I have no shame. But you're right, because when we find that group of people that harmonizes with us, it is fabulous. People automatically do think, oh, you're not social at all. You don't hang. You don't do this. No, honey, I just don't hang with you, but I do
Yeah.
hang and I do have a social life. It's just different from what you assume my social life should be. So I'm glad you pointed that out because it's true. Introverts are like, she lives in a closet. She does nothing. She doesn't know what fun
Yeah.
means. You have to tell her what fun is because all she does is, I'm a homebody too. So immediately she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go anywhere. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't want to do
Yeah.
anything. So I totally agree with you. So now the
And
next
even
question, go ahead,
even
hon.
that is different. I was just going to chime in on a couple things.
Uh huh.
First of all, being a homebody and being introverted are different, and people
Mm
also, they will conflate these two together. You preferring to be like in your own comfortable space, the safe like nest that you've created for yourself, because that's why homebodies are homebodies. They have created a space that nurtures them from every aspect. So they
hmm.
don't have to sort through what's what. They don't have to make sure other people are accommodated. They don't even have to think about someone else.
Mm hmm.
They already have a space that nourishes them. And that's where they want to be, in a space that they already know is nourishing them. That's what homebodies are, and that's why they are. They don't
Mm-hmm.
need to figure out comfort. They have it there.
Yep.
But that's not the same as being introverted. And people think because you don't go to hang out, or you don't want to grab a coffee, or you don't want to do something, you're a homebody. No, I just don't. If I have this much energy, if I have like just this tiny like inch of energy, I'm not going to spend half of it having a conversation with you over coffee. Not when I've got all of this other stuff that I need to sort through. And now I can't even do it because my brain is so depleted. And I'm already going to need a day off to recover from this one coffee conversation. I'm not doing it. So there's that piece. But then also when it comes to those last minute requests, and I have to remember this because my that portion of introversion I have less of. I don't mind being spontaneous and, you know what, let's just grab our things and let's go someplace. Let's just go for a walk somewhere. My husband is more introverted than me, and that's like the kiss of death. And so I I try to be more sensitive and mindful about, like, oh, we were planning to do this, let's just tweak it a little bit. And no, tweaking it just it no, like, no. It's
Don't
like
do that.
mortal danger. And like mentally, like, we know no one's gonna die. Like if we're invited to something, no, we're gonna live to see like the next 2 minutes, like after this request has been made. But it feels like death. It feels like our lives are on the line because we've been told or asked to do something, and it's throwing off what we were planning for. Sometimes you just have to deal with it. But if you don't have to deal with it, then we won't deal with it. And so even I have to be mindful of that aspect, because that's like a trigger for my husband, and it
Mm-hmm.
aggravates me. It's like I'm just instead of taking out the trash tomorrow, I'm asking you to take it out today. It's the trash. It's being taken out either way. Why is this an issue? It's an issue because mentally he planned for doing it tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
not on today. And so now he's got to rearrange his mental priorities to take it out today instead of tomorrow. And it becomes a thing. It's a whole thing. So it's not even, when it comes to things like this, it doesn't even have to do so much with socializing and interacting with other people. It can be just regular basic stuff that it's still that same reaction, that same processing. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he still has to go out to take out the trash, and now he had his energy planned a certain way, and here I come. um and
Interrupting his energy and his whole vibe because that was not in his schedule today, but Jacqueline needs the trash out today. Okay, so let me figure out how I can fit this in.
let me rearrange my life so that the trash can go out like 12 hours earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Queen of Sheba. Like, that's, I get it. I get it. And I still have to be mindful of that, because
Gotcha.
even though we're both introverts, he's more on that spectrum. He's closer to the introverted side than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that can be triggering.
Yeah, triggering upside down for him. So before
Yeah.
I get your empowerment question, my question is, how long have you been in business and why did you choose to definitely focus on women of color and introversion? Do you find that women of color are more introverted, or because you are a woman of color and this is why you chose to help women of color?
So
Oh,
there's a
that
couple of
was
things
awful.
here.
You
So
are a woman of color.
I am a black lady.
Not plural. It's just one woman sitting in front of
Yeah.
me.
I may seem like people and a half, but it's just one me. It's just one black female me. So I started my company Awesome Enterprises about 11 years ago, and
Mhm.
I've been working kind of on my own a little bit before that.
Okay.
So it's been about 10 years, almost 11 years, that I've been in this space of helping women, helping professional women with their communication and their personal leadership by in a process that I call You're Awesome. I've been doing that for ages, and that is, like I mentioned, an extension of what I practically was born doing,
Mhm.
with nurturing and empowering and giving kind of the pathway for that. This aspect of focusing on introverted women of color is fairly recent. So in 2019, it started with kind of a personal rant of mine, in the personal development space in particular, where a lot of the experiences of women of color, being both female and also black or brown, our experiences were being largely dismissed and just completely overlooked,
Mhm.
where we're talking about experiences that we have had personally, that we have lived through, and we are being told by either those who are not of color, who are not female, and who definitely are not females of color, how we should feel about our experiences, why we are not processing our experiences correctly, what we should do in order to not have to deal with these issues at all, as
Mhm.
if we can like change our bodies, or that we wanted to change our bodies that we inhabit. So I was just frustrated with that whole thing, frustrated with it all. And that kind of rabbit hole of trying to find, where are there some voices or some people who look like me, who have had similar experiences and are still in a space of professional development, of spiritual maturity, etc. And I personally was struggling to find any. There were only a couple that I could think of. And me asking other people, for women who were able to share their stories and talk about like the downsides of inhabiting this body as well as the pluses, it's like nil, like absolutely nil. And so I was having a conversation with my colleague, Shawana Kennedy. God bless her, because she got me started on this path. with introverted women of color.
Okay.
So I was telling her, it's frustrating because when people see you, if you are outspoken and you're already being so vocal about your experiences and you're dismissed, like basically, what's the person who's the internal processor supposed to do? Like, what are we supposed to do in these day-to-day situations? If big name celebrities are being like gaslit, what is Michelle in accounting supposed to do? Like what is she supposed to do? And Shawana encouraged me to go down that thread with the introverts. She said there's something to that. You really need to pull on that thread and see where it goes. I was like, well, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, but okay, I'll say yes. We'll see where this goes, and this is where it went. It went to this whole new, and this is now a completely, not only a new focus of my business, a completely different area of my business. Okay. Is in the process of me just having conversations with other women who self-identify as being introverted or being some type of introvert. I'm a social introvert. I'm an introverted extrovert. I'm an extroverted introvert. I'm a nominee, like all of the verts. Because that the typical title does not hold because of the reasons that we stated. But in conversations with these women, they were telling me essentially the same story over and over again. Now, most of them are now entrepreneurs, but before then, they worked in corporate spaces. And so they were sharing experiences where they were told that because they were so quiet, they couldn't get a promotion by the person who is promoting. They were being told, you've got fives across the board. You do everything wonderful. Our department couldn't work without you, but I can't read your mind. I don't know what you're thinking. So I can't give you this raise because I don't know what you're thinking. Like these sorts of conversations were coming up again and again and again. It didn't matter the industry, didn't matter how long they had been there, didn't matter where in the country this was happening. Like all of the factors that you could kind of use to like maybe explain away, like, oh, it's just in finance, or oh, it's just when you're on the West Coast, or oh, it's just if you're new. Like all of these things, nope, didn't matter. You could be brand spanking new, or you could have been there for decades. You could be at entry level, or you could be upper management. You could be in a creative environment or a more conservative one. None of those factors mattered, but it was the same story again and again and again. So then it's like, okay, well, where's the data around this? Like I'm hearing these stories, these women, dozens by now, are telling the same story. Okay, what do the facts and figures have to say about this? Well, nothing. There's no research on this. There's no discussion of this topic, of seeing how specifically women of color are experiencing introversion, one, and then two, how that is being used as an additional justification to prevent them from advancing in their careers or being paid what they should be. Now, we all know there's studies after studies after studies about the pay gap of women in the workplace in general. We know that the average Black woman gets paid roughly $500,000 less than her white female counterpart. If you are Latina or Indigenous, it's even more. It's almost $1 million over the course of your career less that you're paid on a good day. Now, throw into the mix someone who decides that they can't read your mind and therefore they can't give you the raise that they have told you that you deserve. They can't promote you for the job you're clearly qualified for because you're not spending time with the group after hours. They can't tell you or won't tell you about opportunities because they're not sure if someone quiet like you can handle it. So these numbers that are already atrocious, and that's not compared to white males, that's white females we're talking about. So within us women, we already have this discrepancy. In addition to this, you have folks who just decide, well, you're too quiet. So you don't need opportunities that were already short anyway, despite what we are telling you about the quality of your work. And so that's what prompted me to really dig in deep for this particular topic and area, because these conversations, like there's, from a data standpoint, nothing exists about it. even in the space of introversion, where numerous studies have been and continue to be done on introversion on the whole, numbers of books have been written about introversion, including one that's really popular called Quiet by Susan Cain. It's a great read, wonderfully researched, fantastic book. And she's largely known as the authority on introversion.
Mm-hmm.
Her TED Talk has like 29 million views. Like it's great. However, even she only has a passing mention of intersectionality. She has in her book, she mentions, like, as far as kind of the adverse effects and how people respond to introverts. She mentions that people of color and I was trying to remember the exact phrasing. I need to find that. But essentially, those who are differently abled and women of color have even more of a challenge when it comes to introversion. That statement, that sentence is all that there is. That's all that's discussed in this perceived Bible of introversion. And that's incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe I was overlooking this. And so I've been working with different researchers, literally globally, for people who are in this space to see maybe I'm missing something. Because it can't be that no one has looked at this. Like, that's not possible these days. Like, apparently it is possible, because there's been nothing from an academic or research basis that even addresses this issue. So that's my new path now. It's like no one else is going to sign up for this. I say as I look around for someone else to like do this, to take the mantle for this. Like, somebody's got to do something.
Jacqueline does.
Apparently it's me. Apparently I'm the one who's taking up the mantle for it, and it's equally exciting and frustrating, because even with conversations with various researchers, people who are experts within this field, the common response is like, okay, well, but what does that mean? Like, how does that impact anything? Like, what does looking at women of color have to do with anything? It's like, for
what
me,
does, it's important. It needs to be looked at.
Let me just breathe it out.
And
and yeah.
What you said is absolutely right, because women of color are definitely underpaid. Latino and indigenous women underpaid even more, as you said. And I've never thought of that. Of course, this is not my area of expertise, but I've never thought of women in the executive corporate world not being promoted because of that reason. This is mind blowing to me, because this is something I've never even thought about. And the fact that you have tapped into this precise niche is awesome. And also, this book, and this woman doesn't even focus on anything of color, just a one little splurb, like I guess just a little section of it. So that means we're already kind of being thrown to the wayside and not being considered. And even now, as you're doing your research, people are just looking at you, and why does that matter, Jacqueline?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, what's the point or purpose of that? Is for people who are in spaces to make those decisions and who have the power to kind of yay or nay on either advancing within their own organizations, within their own companies, or even entrepreneurs who work with different companies and corporations. It's a head scratcher. Like, why is this? I mean, is this really an issue? Yeah. It's really an issue.
It is.
Because this is just looking from the workplace perspective. That's not taking into account family dynamics, romantic relationships, mental wellness, self-esteem, community, like that community impact and engagement. Like, it doesn't take into account any of this, because in addition to what's happening in the workplace, and not this being able to be so easily dismissed, or there are a couple of women who were reprimanded for being bad Black women, because Black women are loud and always like to do things, and they're not representing Black women well. These type of micro and macro aggressions that these women are facing are repeated, they're over time, and they're dismissed, as we all know. But this is now, okay, money that you could have set aside for retirement, you don't have because someone couldn't read your mind.
Yeah.
Or didn't know what you were thinking. this is money that could have gone to your children's education that now is not there. So now they're having to take out loans because that money, this 500,000 to 900 and some odd thousand that could have gone towards, at least in part could have gone towards this, is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Money that could have gone towards buying a home, towards advancing your own knowledge and your own leadership, that's money that's no longer there. Let alone the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, forget the money. Let's say you're just paid the same amount of money. The ability to advance in your career and go beyond entry or even lower tier levels, that's thwarted because someone doesn't like that you're not hanging out for beers. These sorts of things, there's the parts that we know are already discrepancies and are already disparities,
Mm-hmm.
but now being aware that this too is a barrier, that this is yet another intersection that hasn't been looked at, and even how the experience of introversion,
Mm-hmm.
how that's even, who's quiet, like who's the quiet one here, like you're at a family reunion you didn't want to come to, everyone's been telling you to come to the family gathering, you finally showed up, you're minding your own business, and yet everyone has some commentary about you minding your own business, like having to deal and navigate with that over time, with just so many things. There's so
Exactly.
many aspects of our lives that get affected, and because we're busy like living, we're just trying
Mm-hmm.
to like get through life, we don't even pay attention to so many of those things. But once you hear it, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I've had this experience with my family, I've had this experience with a coworker, I've had this experience with my boss, I've had this. There's so many ways that this distorted notion of introversion affects women on the whole, but especially women of color, because you now have these stereotypes of what a person of color, what a female person of color should and shouldn't be, should or shouldn't do, can or cannot perform or not, you know, all of these things. And now you're going to be like reflective on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need time to yourself on top of that. And this same notion is not applied with equal intensity for for men, and especially for white men, but for white women as well. It's not applied the same way. So I had many women who have had conversations where they're being pulled to the side by someone, like, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you say hello to me? Do you have a problem with me? And now this is part of their, employee record, because they just want to get to their desk and do their work. They're not going to linger and say hi to everyone, but that's taken for the Black female or for the Latina as you have an attitude and you have a problem. But that same notion is not applied to the white guy who doesn't talk,
Yep.
the white lady who doesn't talk to everyone.
Yeah.
They're not being pulled to the side. They're not having this put in their employee record. They're not being held back from opportunities because of this. But for Black and brown women, it is happening. So the experience of introversion is
Mm-hmm.
even different. And I had no, I am an introvert. I am a woman. I am Black. I
Mm-hmm.
am that introverted woman of color. And even I didn't recognize all of these different ways that it plays out and the ramifications of how introversion is experienced. So it's been a learning process for me, honestly, delving into this. It's been very eye-opening. In some ways, I wish I could go back to ignorance because it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. But the upside of it is that as I'm having these conversations, as I'm beginning to be on platforms like yours and on others as well, to share what introversion actually is and what is the ramification for having this misguided notion, specifically when it comes to the experiences of women of color, it's opening the pathway for there to be a new way. There's a new way of thinking about it. There's a new way of acting upon it. There's a new way to go forward so that this doesn't become, or doesn't continue to be, I think is a better way to put it, doesn't continue to be an unnecessary barrier, especially
Exactly.
in workplaces that have the resources and have the manpower to make these larger changes.
Absolutely. And this is good that you tapped into this again, because this is something that even myself, I never thought about how this has affected Black women. Of course, I don't work in the corporate world. Maybe if I was directly in that environment, I would definitely have a better understanding. But I'm not in the corporate world. Aside from being a podcast host, I'm totally in control of that. And I'm a flight attendant. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how it's going to affect me is going to be different how it's going to affect the women you're working with. But as you also said, we're not even talking about the family dynamic. That's not even a discussion being brung up. So, what is one word of encouragement that you want to provide to our listeners now who have heard your message, especially women of color? Focus more on women of color in the executive world who have lost promotions, who have been labeled as she has an attitude because she's not talking to me, or because she didn't want to go out to the, after work to go get a drink with people she doesn't even care to socialize with. And that affects her moving to the next level because she doesn't hang with us.
Yeah, it's and to your point, this is something that depending on your workspace will be slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that there's a consistency in the application
Mm-hmm.
of those adverse effects. It's just the way that it's applied looks slightly different. So instead of a blue hoodie, it might be a green dress, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the same problem, just dressed differently. And so for those women who are in those spaces, um, be they corporate or not, where you have had those conversations, you've been pulled to the side, or you suspect that the reason why you didn't get the the position that was absolutely yours, everyone knew it was yours, and yet somehow magically, you know, this completely out of left field person gets the opportunity. Like, how do you navigate that? What do you do with that? There are usually three things that I provide as kind of foundational stones, if you will. So the first one is creating opportunities for yourself. If you are not getting opportunities that you want, then you need to either find them or you need to create them.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's within your workplace, whether that is an opportunity outside, you need to find it. For me, when I was, and I haven't been in corporate in well over a decade, but when I was in corporate and I wanted to advance where what I was doing and up against this, there was no space for me to have advancement within my workplace, not in my department, and because of the people that I was working with, probably not outside of my department either because they're well connected. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, Jacqueline, no, she's quiet. Let's just X her out of the equation. So I had to create opportunities outside of my workplace in order to get the benefits in my workplace. So for me, again, knowing that speaking, writing, traveling, like all of these are things that are absolutely part of what I would do. My way of creating an opportunity was to join a Toastmasters group. Toastmasters is a public speaking organization and leadership, and a lot of people look to them if you're struggling with speaking publicly, if you're wanting to kind of get some confidence around that, that's a great place to go, and it is. That had no relevance to me. Like I've been doing this since I was barely double digits. I didn't need confidence around it or structure. What I needed is an opportunity to use my skills. And so for me, that was going into these Toastmasters groups and using my speaking skills, using what I already knew in order to help others, but also some different ways and different applications of my skills I learned through that environment. And so this was a way for me to use my skills and a place that got me notoriety, got me visibility, and then bringing those kind of wins into the actual workplace. So what I was doing with Toastmasters had absolutely no bearing on what I was doing in my job. At the time, I was doing project management. At the time, I was in administration, doing project management at an investment firm. So speaking to groups and project management, like could not be further apart. But what was beneficial is because I was able to have an outlet for my skills, dealing with kind of the goings on in my workplace They were more tolerable for one. I didn't have time and energy to give to them for this foolishness because I had something that was positive for me to reflect on and to dive deep into. But then those successes that I got, whether it was getting awards, getting practice, I then brought to the workplace like, hey, I got an award for this. Or, oh, I'm involved in this organization. I'm taking on this leadership track within this outside organization. Me creating that opportunity there led to me getting advancements within the organization I was in. So even though one had nothing to do with the other, because I created that opportunity to use my skills and then brought those wins over, it then let me find that space for advancement. So that's one. The second thing is for once you've created, or even along with creating it, recognize what is the purpose of you even saying yes to opportunities. As introverts, we will often say yes just to get people to shut up and leave us alone. So we will take on things that we have no interest and honestly no business with saying yes to, but we're just tired of being harassed and harangued. So we say yes. That's not going to make people stop harassing you. They're just going to harass you more because now you're responsible for this thing that you said yes for. And it's leading you to stress out more and overthink more because it's another thing that you didn't want to do in the first place. Now you've got even more people. Like it's so just why are you saying yes? Just because someone wants you to do it doesn't mean that you need to say yes. Oftentimes, it's not even anything that needs to happen. It doesn't need to exist at all. And if it does need to exist, are you the one who needs to do it? Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are some instances where you're being told to do something and you can't do anything about that. You just have to do it. But more often than not, you can say no,
Mm-hmm.
and no is that full sentence. Or you can say no and recommend someone else. Because another part of our gift as introverts is we're able to recognize and observe these strengths of other people. So this has nothing to do with you. You have no interest in it. But this other person does have a skill set that would be good for this project. So I'm not interested in doing this. But you know what? Kevin over here is great at it. Kevin has the skills to do it. So I think you should approach Kevin about this instead of us saying yes because we're just tired of being harassed. So being clear on what you're saying yes to and why you're saying yes to it. Then the last piece, when you're in those situations where there's this environment where you can't create opportunities for yourself, maybe you can or can't like find a way around it. Understand what your values are and being clear on that. What is a value for you? Because sometimes there's no salvaging what is there. It's simply time for you to move on. And moving on doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like up and quit, although maybe that's warranted, but oftentimes that's not warranted. It may be just that your season in this space is done. And so now it's time for you to put out the feelers for the spaces that will honor you, that are in alignment with your values, that are in alignment with what you can bring to the table. Because if you are staying in a space simply because it's the space where you are and you're constantly dealing with the stress of what's being said and what's not being said, like introversion aside, you're dealing with kind of the emotional soup that's happening here, and also all of the introvert processing that needs to happen. And also, you're not doing anything that is nourishing you, it's simply providing a paycheck. Find a place where the paycheck at least gives you something else. Because if it's just about the paycheck, well, then stay where you are, stressed out, overworked, falling apart. It has to be more than that. It doesn't have to be more than that immediately, but it does eventually need to be more than that, because otherwise it's going to kill you. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
kill your emotions, it's going to kill your mind, it's going to kill off your body, it's going to kill your spiritual being, it's going to kill you. So being clear on what is valuable to you, what aspects of where you are now are still valuable, how can you lean into those valuable pieces, and if there are not enough pieces of value, where can you go and where can you start looking for those spaces that value you, that are alignment or in alignment to those values that you have, and will allow you to have a paycheck and also nurture and be nourished.
Wonderful. Jacqueline, thank you for those three awesome tips or tasks or, definitely little piece of nuggets. The first one was creating opportunity. The second one was recognizing your why. Why are you saying yes? And the third was if you can't create opportunities, understanding your value. As Jacqueline has said today, introverts and extroverts are often mislabeled. And we're not even going to talk about the other two. But as introverts, we're internally processing stimulation, and extroverts are doing the opposite. Jacqueline has focused on something that even I myself has never even thought about that it was an issue. And it obviously is, as she's discussed with us today, that why is that Black woman not getting that promotion? Why? What's the underlying reason why her coworker is getting so much more money than her, being advanced to the next level, and she's still staying at that same desk, that same chair, in that same position, and she's giving all this positive affirmations, but yet you're not moving me up? What's the underlying reason? And this is such a great research, Jacqueline, that you are doing, because we need to understand why, especially with some of the happenings in the last few years. And Black people just have been like literally been emotionally been like people's punching bags, I feel. So this is just absolutely great for you to tap into. As we end today, I want you guys to definitely hone in on some of the things that she said. And for any of you introverts or extroverts out there, don't let anybody dwindle your light. Let that light shine, and don't let anybody like make you something that you're not. Being an introvert is definitely okay. After today's conversation, you can be as introverted as you want to be. So listeners, as always, thank you for listening to this episode, and remember to love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself, and have a great one, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Fanpale Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.